to KZN. Hundreds of flood victims remain without permanent shelter there. In the latest report, a group of at least 80 displaced flood victims were forced to sleep in buses outside a police station earlier this week. After those reports emerged about their plight, they've since been moved to a hotel, while the KZN government scrambles for housing 5 months after the deadly disaster. Our reporter Karinda Jagmohan is part of our team in Lamontville today. She joins us now live, and those images that emerged in those reports, Karinda, were incredibly heartbreaking, especially when you consider how long these victims have had to endure this indignity, quite frankly.
Indeed, Ayanda, for the past 5 months since the April floods hit this community, hit KwaZulu-Natal, these residents have been moved from pillar to post. Initially, when their homes were destroyed by the April floods, they were moved to a community hall here in Lamontville. But that hall had poor living conditions for the residents. They were then moved to a hostel. After they were evicted from that hostel, they were then taken to, they were then took illegal shelter at a lodge also just nearby here in Montclair. After they were evicted from that area, the eThekwini municipality tried to move them in a separate hostel but said there were security concerns there. After all of this has happened, earlier this week, the group of about 80 people, including elderly residents, young children, babies, spent the night before last in 2 buses outside this police station because they had nowhere to go. The eThekwini municipality, having seen essentially the media reports that unfolded after this debacle, then moved the group to a nearby hotel. We'll take you there. But according to a local councillor, that area also has poor living conditions. It has been the same for many residents, displaced flood victims across eThekwini. The core issue here is that 5 months after the April floods, the municipality, the KZN government, is still scrambling to find proper accommodation for those who lost their homes during that devastating disaster. In fact, just yesterday, the eThekwini Mayor, Olisi Kaunda, said that by Christmas he wants to have all mass care centres or all residents who are living in mass care centres be moved out to temporary residential units. But that process is also under question. In fact, earlier this week on Sunday, there was an effort by the KZN government to move displaced residents from a community hall in Reservoir Hills, just west of Durban, to a former student resident building. But that situation was also blockaded by suburban residents there who complained about the building being not maintained, saying that there have been sewage leaks there and that the 47 families who would move into that block would cause further issues with that building. And then essentially after that, also news emerged that the landlord had wanted to change his lease agreement with the KZN government, wanting the government to buy that property. Those residents have since also been moved to hotel. Across eThekwini, we have been to community halls where people are living in overcrowded, undignified, unsanitary conditions and are still waiting for some sign of when they'll be moved to temporary residential units 5 months after their homes were destroyed and when they'll get permanent housing. Many have been unemployed. Their shacks that they had been living in prior to the April floods were destroyed, and so many don't have any other option for housing, depending currently on the KZN government, who's still scrambling, like you mentioned, to find housing for them.
Karinda Jagmohan, thanks very much indeed for that. We'll continue watching that story with you as it continues to unfold. Karinda, live for us there from Lamontville in KwaZulu-Natal.